At the corner of 10th and Broad.
I didn't know anything about it. I think it's pretty cool.
Countless Richmonders march by each day.
I have not ever noticed it before.
Never stopping.
Yeah, this press has shocked me. I can't believe it.
Frankly, it's quite easy to miss.
This one right here, the bent one.
Beneath the hulking granite behemoth known as Old City Hall.
So they really don't know what happened.
Lies a 119-year-old mystery.
Oh, wow.
Wrapped in 7 inches of warped wrought iron. In this city, which reveres the past, one little landmark has slipped through the cracks. Richmond in the 1890s, a bustling hub attracts businessmen from across the South. One frequent visitor, Colonel J.M. Winstead from Greensboro, a popular and prominent banker who some say carries himself like a preacher.
Somebody said in Richmond that he was a very dignified-looking man.
On the morning of August 23, 1894, the out-of-towner climbs the steps at City Hall.
Went up to the observation deck.
Seemingly to take in the commanding sights. What happens next has been intriguing historians like Selden Richardson for more than a century. From the very beginning.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you.
Sid Davis.
Ask what you can do for your country.
Enjoyed his front row seat watching U.S. history unfold.
Pretty obvious to us that this was a magical figure.
Good evening, my fellow citizens.
Covering the Kennedy White House, the correspondent for Westinghouse Broadcasting observes grace under fire in the Oval Office.
The size of this undertaking.
I was in that night when he made the speech to Khrushchev and he said, "Get the missiles out of Cuba."
Davis vividly remembers Americans falling for their very own royal couple.
She was stunning, and the audience just went crazy, and she loved it.
In November of 1963, the former crime reporter from Ohio would follow JFK during his ill-fated 2-day 5-city trip.
This is Sid Davis with the presidential party in Texas.
Most in the Lone Star State are waiting with open arms.
As the president and his wife kind of moving along the gate.
The crowd at the airport was wonderful. They gave her a huge bouquet of roses.
On board the press bus, Sid joins the presidential motorcade through the teeming streets of Dallas.
We were about 80 feet behind the presidential limousine.
The president is speaking in Republican Dallas this afternoon.
Moments after the president reaches Dealey Plaza, Sid and the other journalists are jolted by a loud crack.
There were 3 distinct shots, no question about it. We didn't know who they hit. All we saw was that the crowd started to run, people scattered.
Sid doesn't know an assassin's bullet cuts down President Kennedy.
We looked up ahead and we saw everything scattering, and we saw the presidential limousine just disappear. It was chaos. All hell broke loose.
Give me a quick level. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Minutes later, Sid and other journalists converge on Parkland Hospital and wait anxiously for updates on JFK's condition.
So we're now going to switch you to Sid Davis at the hospital in Dallas.
This is a great story of a forgotten woman.
Elizabeth Van Lew, a woman who single-handedly changes the course of the country.
She defied gender, class, and race.
Her actions, though, make her arguably the most despised woman in Virginia.
She really put her life on the line.
In the years prior to the Civil War, the slave trade is flourishing in Richmond, a place where massive fortunes are gained, while entire families are broken up, sold at auction. Elizabeth Van Lew is born in 1818 into a wealthy, slave-owning household. A woman of means, living in the finest mansion on Church Hill.
She was accepted into a society. She was definitely a part of Richmond's elite.
But the Quaker-educated Van Lew comes to abhor the institution of humans owning humans. So she secretly starts freeing her slaves following her father's passing 20 years before the Emancipation Proclamation.
For a white person to do all that she did really was incredible.
Historian Dr. Laurinette Lee says the decision sets the unmarried Van Lew on a crash course with most of her fellow Virginians.
She was seen as someone that was almost a threat to Southern society.
At the outset of the Civil War, many Richmonders who oppose seceding from the Union flee north, but not Van Lew.
She believes that the slaveholders who argue on behalf of secession are hysterical.
In fact, she does not sit idly by watching the blue and the gray create a river of red. She plays an active role while war rages around her. Van Lew starts spending her entire fortune buying, freeing, and educating countless slaves.
She felt Virginians had a special duty to save the Union.
The 43-year-old also frequents the notorious Libby prison, aiding Union officers starving and suffering in squalor. She's not just ferrying food and medicine. Van Lew helps countless prisoners escape, hiding them in her own home.
That would have been seen as treason.
But Van Lew's greatest contribution to the Union's war effort remains top secret. With the South in open rebellion, Van Lew wages her own covert war. Her friends, working as servants in the homes of Confederate leaders, stealthily gather military intelligence.
There were people who were being executed for treason against the Confederacy in Richmond.
Van Lew and her clandestine network of a dozen black and white operatives risk life and limb.
They lived daily with the threat of death.
The President of the United States is dead.
30 minutes after the fatal shot was fired, the unthinkable is announced at 1 p.m.
President Kennedy has been assassinated. It's official now.
Total devastation.
A hush falls over the ER. Agent Lawson doesn't have time to mourn his boss's passing.
I went with the motorcade that took the coffin out to the airport and helped put the coffin on Air Force One.
That was Oswald.
Wynn would stay behind in Texas and watch Lee Harvey Oswald deny killing the president. He would also help carry the accused assassin's rifle back to Washington. 3 days following the assassination, Wynn Lawson would provide security at JFK's funeral.
I was at the cemetery, pretty close to the grave site. It was a terrible tragedy for that family.
So many years later, Wynn still struggles with one regret.
I never got to say anything to the children, but looking back, I wish I had been able to talk to them about how sorry I was that it happened.
Following the assassination, President Kennedy's murder became a taboo subject in the Secret Service.
We didn't say anything to one another, and didn't for years.
Reflecting on the American tragedy, a half-century after President Kennedy's death, Wynn still replays the events from that day.
At times I wish I'd never been born.
The pain may have diminished somewhat, but the 86-year-old retired agent still harbors some deep-rooted guilt over the death of JFK.
I cried an awful lot in the years, but it happened, and I've just gone on with my life.
Secret Service agent Winston Lawson, a link to one of the most infamous episodes in U.S. history, a crime he prays never to see repeated.
I'm the only agent in history of the Secret Service that didn't advance where the president was killed. And to this day, it's the same thing. I'm still the only one. Thank God.